Hello and welcome to the Etch Play Weekly Live Show. It's Thursday. I'm Ben Joy. I'm going to be hosting today, and I'm joined by Adam Burr. Adam, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm ready, as always, to talk about video games.
That's what we're here for. So, shall we dive straight in? Shall we just get going straight with the news this
Sure,
week?
why not? Yeah, dispense with the small talk and
Do you want any small talk? How's the weather where you are? We're in different
no
places.
no
I'm in
foreplay at
Leeds.
all this week, is there?
Yeah,
Just
I'm
straight in.
I'm in I'm in Leeds. It's quite sunny outside. You're in Southampton. How's the weather there?
It's rainy, soggy and rainy. Kind of scattered showers, you might say, if you're a weather person.
Okay, the Etch Play podcast live show. Just smashing stereotypes. I'm up in the north and it's lovely. Adam's down in the south and it's pretty grim. So it's not true what they say, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a northerner. Right, shall we get into some news? That was top quality small talk, by the way. Top quality.
Yeah, I regret it deeply now that we've done it. Let's get into some news.
Yeah. Right, this week. So we have the latest entertainment retail stats. They have arrived. So a new report from the Entertainment Retail Association, which is here in the UK, apparently shows that boxed Switch game sales have totaled £88.7 million since January 1st. And for those keeping score, that's this year to date. Although that's down 12.5% when compared to this time last year, that's perhaps related to the general economic downturn which we're seeing in this country and across Europe and the rest of the world, to be honest. But it does mean that box Switch titles are the highest grossing entertainment product in the UK, which might be surprising for some people. PlayStation, combining physical games for both the PS4 and the PS5, was the next highest games format with 79.6 million, which is actually up 6.5% year on year as opposed to the Switch, which has come down. Back in 2021, PlayStation was second only to Switch again, but this year has to settle for third place overall because vinyl albums have grown 6.5% to 80.9 million. So people are liking that nostalgic way to listen to music. The purists will say that's the best way to listen to it. I think it sounds best off vinyl, and I think there's a lot of people that would agree with me. And Xbox software sales, which encompasses both Xbox One and the Series X boxed games, came in at number 7 with sales of 17.8 million, which is down 14.3%. So that's a lot lower than Switch and PlayStation and the worst downturn. Currently ahead of Xbox this year are things like CDs, which might be very surprising for some people to hear. Compact discs for the younger people in the audience who might not know what a CD is. They were 68.9 million. DVDs at 66.8 million and Blu-rays at 52.1 million. In general, most are in decline thanks to the growing digital market, streaming services, and just generally people having less money to spend this year, which we'll be touching on later on in the show. And yeah, so combined video games retail revenues are still far bigger than music, TV, and film, with gaming's combined total 186.6 million, music's 149.8 million, and film and TV combined at 118.9 million. Adam, I've thrown a ton of numbers at you there.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I'm pretty sure there was a 1 and an 8 in there somewhere. I mean, these numbers, there's an interesting because there's kind of two stories going on here, isn't it? One story is the kind of continued ascendancy of the Switch as a platform, especially a retail platform. So we talk about boxed titles. Switch performs really well, which I guess makes some kind of sense when you think about like the average Switch consumer is maybe more likely to buy a physical title, whereas a lot of the more maybe the Xbox and PlayStation gamers are faster adopters of the digital download and the kind of other options of getting games from the stores that way. So yeah, good news for the Switch. Surprisingly strong numbers if you ask me. I know they're all going down, but they are better than I expected given the things we've talked about. Economic downturn you mentioned as well, but also the rise of digital services and streaming, things like Netflix and other things as well. Just everything's going to eat into these numbers, so you'd expect them to go down over time, probably increasingly as we move forward year on year. But yeah, I mean, gaming's still in a very strong position as well. So
yeah, I think the thing with the Switch as well is that when you compare it to the PlayStations and the Xboxes, like every time a new PlayStation and Xbox comes out, the storage you can get is just huge. Like the Xbox Series X, you can get I think either 500 gig or I think the Series X maybe is just a terabyte by default. Whereas a Switch doesn't have anywhere near that kind of storage capability, and with which we've talked about on the show before, games are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It could maybe just be easier for some players to just buy the disc. Obviously, you do install stuff on the disc on the Switch when you buy a disc version as well. We're calling it discs, but it's not really. It's physical.
It's a cartridge,
like a cartridge,
for Switch,
isn't it?
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, CDs being up there is incredibly surprising at that amount. I didn't realize
Everyone's buying
that
now. That's
CDs.
what I call music. 199.
Yeah. So, but yeah, those are the numbers. Very interesting reading, and like you say, even though a lot of them are decreasing, they're still very positive. I wouldn't be too disappointed with sales figures like that. Adam, do you want to talk to us about Splitgate?
Sure, because Splitgate have announced, well, the studio, I should say, 1,047 games have announced this week that the free-to-play game, which you might remember, it was a bit like Halo but with portals, is actually kind of not coming to an end, but development is going to stop on new features and they're going to be focused exclusively on a new title that they're working on, which is kind of sad and exciting, I guess, depending on your level of love for Splitgate. If you're a Splitgate player, you're probably sad to see no new features come to Splitgate, but also excited for what this next game might bring. The next game is apparently going to be set in the same universe and still feature portals and things like that, so we're expecting probably a very similar game, maybe a Splitgate 2 or something else in the Splitgate universe, it sounds like. And I've got a direct quote here that I can read for you as well from the studio, and this was posted on Twitter. They said, after careful consideration and much deliberation, the 1047 Games team has determined that in order to build the game fans deserve and to build it in a way that isn't trying to retrofit and live operate an existing product, we are ending feature development on Splitgate. And yeah, so it's really interesting to see where this one goes, or kind of fascinating, I guess, because there's been examples of pretty good multiplayer games that have gone away and come back stronger in a sequel. You know, it worked for Titanfall, it worked for Destiny, arguably, as well, in terms of the changes they made. You know, both of those definitely came back much stronger and with a lot more content. So hopefully we'll see something like that here as well, and we'll see, you know, Splitgate evolve from what it is now into something even better. And in the meantime, it is worth noting Splitgate will still receive bug fixes and maintenance, so it's not like the game's totally abandoned. You can still play it, and it remains free to play as well. So if you haven't played it yet, you can check it out whenever you feel like it.
Yeah, it's a very good game. I know we enjoyed playing it. It's a slightly funny one, isn't it? Because it seemed like Splitgate was pitching itself as a games as a service, and we talked a lot on the show about long life games, and it felt like that's kind of what they were going for with this game. But this game must have been out for, I don't know, 12 months, 18 months, time's blown together, but it's not been that long, so it feels not maybe a full U-turn, but quite the turn from the studio to abandon that and go in a different, I guess, a slightly different direction. As I say, it sounds like it's going to be a game related to Splitgate, but yeah, just interesting. Maybe, I wonder whether that's a financial decision, maybe they just didn't think they had enough fresh ideas to keep Splitgate interesting, so they wanted to try something a little bit different, but yeah, certainly an interesting one. And as Adam said, if you haven't played Splitgate, I've still got the Switch on my brain, go check it out because it is a really good game. So now we're going to follow up on some of last week's stories, because this show's all about continuity. So last week we talked about Xbox Game Pass Family and Friends, and it is now official. It is fully launched in Ireland and Colombia after it received a limited trial with some users, and it's expected to launch in more territories gradually in the coming months. Hopefully that will be in the rest of the UK soon. As we discussed on the show last week, the new plan allows for 5 people to share on Game Pass Ultimate. The price in Ireland is currently €21.99, which might give us a rough idea of what it might be like in the UK. That's currently about £20, and it might be a little bit more if we're unlucky. And bearing in mind, Game Pass now is, I think it's £10 or £11 a month. So if you have 5 of you split in double that cost, it's a very good saving. So we'll be keeping an eye on that, and we'll be sure to be talking about it once it is rolled out a bit further. There was a little bit more about the Ubisoft press conference that have been announced as well. So last week we talked about Assassin's Creed Mirage, which was a new title we expect to hear more about at this weekend's event. The event, if you weren't aware, is called Ubisoft Forward. It's going to be live streamed on Saturday evening at 8 p.m. If we've worked that out correctly, maybe just double check it so you don't show up at 8 p.m. and we've got it wrong. We cannot be held accountable if we've got the maths wrong. But yeah, it's looking like we're going to get a look at Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope, Skull and Bones, and as well as a special Assassin's Creed showcase offering a peek at the future of the franchise, which we're sure means more of Assassin's Creed Mirage, which did kind of leak in a weird kind of way last week. So I think we'll be getting more information on that soon. Sticking with the theme of live streamed press conferences, tomorrow at 9 p.m. There's going to be a Disney and Marvel game showcase, and that's expected to include a new look at Marvel's Midnight Suns, Lego Star Wars updates, and potentially new exciting announcements too. As anything with Disney and Marvel, expectations are high, and I would expect probably a few surprises. We normally get those from these kind of shows from those two companies. And you're going to say something? Go ahead, Adam.
I was just going to say, yeah, there's a lot of secret Star Wars games in development, and I'd be very surprised if we don't see at least one or two of them in that live stream. So it'd be interesting to see what the Star Wars license is doing now, because obviously it used to be just EA made Star Wars games, and now they're working with more partners. So we're going to see kind of a wider array of different Star Wars games. It'd be exciting to see what those are going to look like.
Yep, and if people don't talk about a remake of Knights of the Old Republic, you are going to riot, I assume, because it's.
I mean, that's technically announced. It's just in development hell.
Yeah, but if you don't get some more details about it,
I mean, at this point, if it still exists, that's the only thing that matters.
Fair. One day you will be satisfied. Yeah. Okay, and lastly, you may have seen this during the rounds already, but we have spoken about on the show before about the regulators casting an eye over the Microsoft deal to buy Activision Blizzard. For those that didn't remember, it's for an eye-watering $68.7 billion, billion with a B. And one component of that is that the governments are wondering whether it's fair, essentially, and whether making games like Call of Duty exclusive, if that would be detrimental to the market overall. In response to that, Phil Spencer of Microsoft has publicly said that they would honour the existing deals that are already in place, and that is expected. But also Microsoft want to keep releasing Call of Duty on PlayStation, and his exact words were that they have already offered several more years. That's important to remember, that he said several more years. So in response to Phil Spencer's response, as these things are, a game of tennis, Jim Ryan of Sony has hit back, presumably because Sony would rather keep Activision's acquisition. Let me just try that again. Presumably because Sony would rather the acquisition doesn't go through because it's not in their best interest. He's saying that Microsoft are only offering 3 years, and basically he's complaining about that fact, which is a little bit strange because firstly, it's Sony who do deal in exclusive titles. It's not like every game that they put out on the PlayStation is available everywhere else. So they've got a number of exclusive titles, so it's not like they're not doing it. And also because he's insinuating that Microsoft are lying about several more years, but 3 years I would categorize, as most people would, as meaning several. And also this is just an initial deal. There's nothing to say that Microsoft are going to see out the 3 years and then run away with Call of Duty, never to return. I think it would be highly unlikely that Microsoft wouldn't enter into some contractual agreement or at least put an offer on the table. So it's an interesting one. It feels like as the weeks go on, it's starting to get a little bit uglier each time this story comes up. Whether it goes through or not, still not sure, but it's got a lot of people talking. Adam, what's your opinion on the situation?
Yeah, I mean, I do think Jim Ryan's comments are extremely odd. Like, if it was, I don't know, like somebody else big in the industry who was, hadn't spent a lot of their life securing exclusives for another console, you'd be like, okay, that maybe is more of a valid criticism. But I mean, I think there are, Jim Ryan's comments aside, there are a lot of legitimate concerns about this acquisition. I still think it probably will go through, but it does put Microsoft in a really strong position. And the only thing that you really have in terms of saying, are they going to abuse that position, is just their word for it. Like Microsoft is just going to say, we're going to be good guys. We're not going to do anything nefarious with this, which is easy for them to say now. And obviously they could change their minds later, change of leadership, whatever happens. It'd be too late if the deal goes through and then they change their minds and do this later once that 3-year period is over. So there is, I guess, some reason to be concerned. but I don't think it will be enough to put a stop to the deal overall. What I do wonder is whether this is symptomatic of perhaps quite fierce negotiations behind the scenes. What it does do is it gives Microsoft a huge amount of leverage to have Call of Duty in one hand and be like, sure, we'd love to give you Call of Duty, but what are you going to give us in return? What is it going to take for this? How much is it worth to you? And obviously there'll be lots of people working on that behind the scenes, but we know that Microsoft, one of their dreams is to get Game Pass on more consoles. Sony would probably rather die than let that happen, but I imagine that has been raised in discussions. I'm sure it's at least been tabled as an option. We also know that Sony are very aggressive about the cut they take from games being sold on their platform or using crossplay or free-to-play monetization. If there's microtransactions, they take the cut. They're very protective of that cut. Could Microsoft be saying, well, we want it to be free-to-play on PlayStation, but all the money in cosmetics comes back to us? So there could be any number of things that Microsoft are proposing that Sony wouldn't be happy with. And I guess Sony don't have many options other than complaining publicly and hoping that public pressure either kills this deal completely or that public pressure convinces Microsoft to keep that good guy act up and be more generous. But it does give Microsoft a tremendous amount of power over one of the biggest franchises in the world. That said, 6 years, if it's that, we do think it's the current deal is about 3 years from now, we think, and then there's another 3 years on top of that, is quite a long time in games. Call of Duty, as ludicrous as it sounds now, might be a lot less relevant in 6 years compared to how it is now. There could be other games, that have really risen through the ranks and taken that crown. We've seen, the rise of several games. There's always a kind of cycle of popularity. No game stays huge forever. Apart from Tetris, I guess.
Yes,
but
game.
So, it's a complicated one for regulators to figure out, and that's why I think they'll probably just shrug their shoulders and let it go through. But there's no mistake here. Like, Microsoft spent this much money for a reason. It gives them a huge amount of power. They wouldn't spend that much money if it didn't give them a huge amount of power, and it remains to be seen how exactly they will go on to wield that power.
Yeah, like Sony, you can charge people £100 for Call of Duty, which I'm sure it will get to some point. Come play it on Xbox for $21.99 a month with 5 of your friends.
Yeah,
is potentially the way it's going to go. But yeah, definitely food for thought, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty more unraveling from this story in the coming months, whether this deal goes through or not. I agree with you, Adam. I do think it will go through. But until then, well, we'll be back very soon. We're going to be talking about ways to save money in gaming, offering some tips and places to look for good deals and stuff. But before that, Adam himself has been checking out a game called Tinykin, and stick around because he's about to check it out and enjoy that clip. See you in about 10-15 minutes. Bye-bye.
Hey, you're watching an Etch Play video with me, Adam Burt. Thanks for tuning in, I appreciate it. And today we are checking out Tinykin. This is a game that is available on a number of platforms, but we're playing it here on the Xbox Series X through Xbox Game Pass. And it's developed by a team called Splash Team and published by Tiny Build. I like this game a lot, and I thought, you know what, let's bring it to the Etch Play video library. Let's put it on YouTube. Let's put it on Twitch. So here I am. The first thing you'll notice is that I am tiny. This is me. I'm playing as Milo Dane. And we're in a kind of like a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids grounded style world, where you can see there's, real world objects are massive, and I can slide around on my little bar of soap, and I can collect this. It looks like popcorn, but it's actually pollen that I'm collecting there so that I can make nectar. And yeah, I think this game is really good. Straight away you'll notice I'm being followed by little creatures as well. Here's a new one of those. A little animation each time you meet a new kind of creature, and the creatures are the Tinykin. That's what the game is named after. And each kind of Tinykin has a different power. These ones are the explosive Tinykin, which means I can blow things up like this, which we'll do right now. So you obviously notice, there's some kind of similarities to Pikmin here in a way, because there's the kind of little creatures following you around angle. but it's quite basic, I guess. There's not like a lot of like resource management. You have to collect as many of these as you can to accomplish certain objectives, but you don't really have to deal with like you have to feed them or keep them alive or anything like that. They just follow you around, and you can tell them to do things whenever you need them. And each mission is mostly about just collecting things and finding objects in the world, and then using your Tinykin sometimes to move them as well. Say you find something that somebody else is looking for, you can use your pink Tinykin, which are the ones that I'm throwing incorrectly. I need some red ones. That's what I'm missing. I'm missing red ones. The pink ones carry things for you, so they can be like, oh, you know, take this pair of scissors over here and give it to those guys, and then they'll be happy and they'll give me some kind of reward in return. The other kind of influence, I guess, that you'll probably notice is just kind of 3D platforming in general. It's got kind of a bit of a Super Mario 64 or a Banjo-Kazooie about it. You have a bubble glide, which I just did, and I've got some red ones I can blow things up again. However, my red ones are quite limited, so I'm going to hold on to those for the time being. And go this way instead. Oh, there's some more. Let's get those, shall we? So the game takes place over a variety of rooms in this house, and there is actually kind of a storyline. It's like a kind of almost a sci-fi storyline, actually, about like another planet and aliens and stuff. So there is kind of a lot more going on than just you become small somehow. So it's worth checking out if you're into the kind of sci-fi angle as well. Got quite a big room to explore here, and all the levels are rooms. So you know, there's a bathroom level, there's a bedroom level. This is sort of like a, I don't know what you call this, living room level. Let's blow this up. So you do a lot of climbing, and then there'll be things like this, ropes or strings that you can climb and slide on, which kind of help you get back to where you got if you fall off, you fall down to the ground, which is very handy. So I always unlock those as soon as I see them. There's a great example of me falling when I meant to do a jump. Let's try that again. Use the bubble glide to make sure I can get all this sweet, sweet pollen. Let's see if we can... Okay, more pollen. I always get the pollen because the pollen unlocks better glide abilities, which is really useful. Just means you can access a lot more areas. Climb this rope and get some more pollen here as well. This is quite near the beginning of the game. I mean, you saw that little intro animation for the explosive ones, so this kind of tells you that they're only the second kind that I've unlocked. There are more kinds of Tinykin that you won't see in this video. Just got the red ones and the pink ones here. And there you go, we've unlocked a ramp. Handy. So you meet a lot of bugs, and the bugs are the ones who are kind of giving you the quests, I guess. They're like, I want this, please help me. Let's do a little slide, which is a very enjoyable way to get around. In general, I'd say the movement and kind of the platforming controls here are really good. That's kind of an essential part of the platformer, is does it feel good to play, and this definitely does. I think fans of platformers will be happy. There's an example of a pink Tinykin making another path for us there. Anything we can... Yeah, we can blow these up to get some more pollen. Got a few more reds now, so we'll be a little bit more cavalier about what we're doing, what we're unlocking. And there's some more down here as well. And pollen. Let's get everything. So if you're the kind of person who likes to collect things, this is definitely the game for you, because there is a lot to collect. There's like something like 1,000 pieces of pollen, like in every level. Oh yeah, it says in the top right, 1,000, which is obviously a lot. You do sometimes find clumps that are worth more than one at a time, but there's a lot of collecting to do. Okay, so we need 2 full soap bubble glides to get to the top of the halogen, which I don't currently have because I haven't got enough pollen. So let's ignore that for the time being, I think. I do want to get these guys. And we got lots of Tinykin. Let's go and get these ones as well. But yeah, in general, this is a kind of a recommendation from me, shall we say. This game is maybe not on your radar yet. It is on Game Pass, like I say, so it's quite easy to access. If you you have Game Pass, then you have the ability to play this basically right now. And yeah, I think it's one of those special little gems maybe that I would never have played if it wasn't on Game Pass, but the fact that it is means that I can play it, and I'm very glad that I have. I've actually finished the game. I finished it the other day, and the whole thing, it never got boring to me. I really enjoyed kind of exploring the entire house and collecting as much as I possibly could. So yeah, check out Tinykin, available right now on Xbox and a bunch of other places as well. I highly recommend it. Cheers.
Hello, and we are back. That was Adam checking out Tinykin. Looks a lot of fun. Definitely worth checking out. Now, so as we alluded to earlier on in the show, times are getting quite tough right now. I'm sure that's not news to too many people, but as the show is all about gaming, we thought it might be helpful to have a look at some of the ways that you can save money in gaming, and we're looking at this from a consumer perspective rather than how can studios save money. That's a whole different topic in itself, but we want to be coming at this from the consumer angle this week. So we're going to start off by talking about something which can make quite a big difference, which is quite easy potentially to overlook, and that is energy saving. So if you're an Xbox gamer looking to save energy and in turn that energy money, you can go to your Xbox Series X settings and make sure that the sleep mode is set to energy saver rather than standby. At current rates, that could save you up to over £50 a year, which is not to be sneezed at, just by changing a setting on something that you're not even using at the time. And with the energy price cap raising next month, that could be saving you even more money, because leaving your device on standby is going to start costing more money as the prices go up. So Energy Saver is actually now the default on new Series X consoles, but if you've got an older one, it isn't going to be, so it's worth going and checking that out, because I know, Adam, you had an older Xbox Series X because you got one early doors, and you kind of brought this to our attention by
mine was on
it.
Mine was on the standby mode that uses all the energy. Mine was the mode that says off, but is actually not off at all.
So that's definitely worth checking out, because there is savings to be had there. And just to put that in perspective, so the Series X uses 13 watts, the Series S, if you have that, is 10 watts, and the One S is 11 watts. Whereas when you're in energy saver mode, by comparison, that only consumes 0.5 watts. So that is a huge, huge difference. The only downside is it means you have to fully boot up the Xbox before you resume playing. But with the new models of Xbox, that's about 15 seconds. So for the money that you would save for waiting 15 seconds before you can start playing a game, it definitely feels worth it. Enabling the energy saver mode on any Xbox console will reduce usage to less than 20p per month while idle, and usage always varies a bit depending on how much you use the console and what you're using it for, whether that's for gaming or potentially streaming off Netflix and things like that. Looking at PlayStation, so the default off standby mode on the PS4 only uses 0.5 watts, similar to what the energy saver on the Xboxes do, but other modes can use up to 3.4 watts. The PS5's default power saver mode also is 0.5 watts, but with networking enabled in the rest mode, it can use up to 2, so it's worth bearing that in mind as well. Looking at the Switch, during gameplay, the Switch only uses 7 watts in TV mode, which isn't too bad for where you're actually playing it. And and that's less than the Xbox when it's turned off, which is quite incredible, when it's not on energy saver, of course. And when powered off, the Switch uses a maximum of 0.5 watts. So it seems like you can get all of your consoles down to that if you just make sure you've got the right settings. And lastly, if you have a gaming PC, this is obviously highly variable in terms of power consumption, because they can be a lot more bespoke and a lot more different models than your standard gaming consoles. But on average, your standby mode could be using between 3 and 10 watts, so that is quite a lot. So if you don't mind waiting for things to boot up, turning it all the way off is probably also worth considering to save some pounds just for maybe a minute or two while it boots up. But definitely a few things you can look at from an energy saving mode there, just small tweaks which can start to make quite a big difference, especially if you're an avid gamer and you have all of these consoles and a gaming PC, which I know a lot of people will have.
Yeah, definitely an every little helps approach there. You know, and it is small in the grand scheme of things. Some of those wattages don't compare to, you know, the things you actually use all the time. But if you think about it, you know, the Xbox could cost you a Netflix subscription over the course of a year or a month soon. So it is worth considering. Next up, we're going to talk about deals. So you might be looking to spend less on actual games and buying games, which makes sense. And most major platforms have sales, obviously, but the king of them all is Steam sales, which frequently boasts massive discounts that you've probably seen in your email inbox before if you're a member of Steam. But we're going to say you should beware of just buying things just because they're on sale. And the kind of thing to remember is, if you weren't going to buy it, but you did because it was on sale, you haven't actually saved any money. What you've done is you've been tempted into buying something that you weren't actually going to buy. So it's not actually a saving. However, sometimes there are games that we know that we want, and we've kind of planned that we're definitely going to buy them. Maybe we've told ourselves that we're definitely going to buy something at a certain point later this year, maybe, and then suddenly you find out it is on sale. In that scenario, it does represent a saving, and often a really good one. So it is worth kind of keeping an eye out for deals. You can use the wishlist function on Steam in particular, which is really good for making a list of games that you definitely want, and you're definitely going to buy them at some point. And then you use that list to monitor when they go on sale, because you get email notifications and things like that. I think when buying things in general, I mean, this is advice just for life, you know, always do a bit of research and try to find the best deal. The first shop you check might not necessarily be the best price. Give it a little Google as well. It's always a handy thing to do. And the other thing I wanted to say really was, if a game you really want is available in a physical edition, maybe it's time to give pre-owned games a try again. Because I think a lot of people have a psychological kind of aversion to pre-owned titles, pre-loved titles, should we call them. We value them less because the wrapper's open, but the wrapper doesn't really matter, you know. In the modern age, games frequently have very little on the actual disc anyway, so the disc is nothing more than a key that grants you the download, which is the same as everyone else's download. You know, the data on your hard drive that you end up with is the exact same. And physical titles are really popular at Christmas time in particular, because they make gifts you can give and wrap. And for some reason, we never consider pre-owned games when we're doing that. I think it's like another psychological, social thing where you feel like if you're going to give someone a pre-owned game, it's like an insult or something because you haven't paid the full price. But let's buck that Christmas trend, because, you know, as long as it works, and assuming it's not missing some kind of like physical collectible pack-in, it functions exactly the same. And I'm going to say, especially if the games are for your kids, they're young, they should be happy with what they're given, whether it's been opened already or not. And you could just tell them you opened it to try it out before giving it to them. You could say you're being a conscientious parent. So basically, my official advice is lie to your kids.
Christmas is all a lie anyway. It's built on lies. Just kidding. Santa Claus is real. He definitely is. But yeah, lots of good advice there, Adam. You got me thinking when you were talking there about when you're buying things online, the physical things. There are like handy plugins as well that you can get for browsers. So Honey is a good one, which will scour the internet looking for discount codes that you might not be aware of, which can help you save some money as well. So it's always worth checking those out as well. Next, we're going to talk about microtransactions. So it's something we've talked about on this show before, and as I'm sure a lot of people are probably aware, a lot of the money in gaming comes from microtransactions, and lots of people regularly do spend on them. Some of which are like loot boxes, which are almost like gambling-esque, and we've heard horror stories of people spending significant amount of money every month on them and kind of almost not realizing it. So we're not coming down one way or the other on whether that's a bad thing or not. That's up for discussion by people much more important than us who will ultimately make that call, and everyone has their own opinions which they're entitled to. So we're not intending to do that, but what we are saying is if you are one of those people who do engage in microtransactions, it might be time to start thinking about setting a spending limit for yourself so that you set aside a specific budget and you only go up to that point, which will help you from slipping into those scenarios where you can kind of get to the end of the month, and because you've kind of done a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit there, you get to the end of the month and look at your bank account and you've spent a lot more than you potentially were looking at. If you set some spend limits, that can really help to cap that off and head it off at the pass so you don't get any nasty shocks at the end of the month. So spending limits are often thought of as being something that only a gambling addict needs, but actually, from time to time, we can all use them because sometimes you can just do things by accident and lose track of what you've done. So it doesn't mean you necessarily have a problem. So again, there shouldn't be any kind of stigma around that. So setting yourself a limit and sticking to it, planning out your purchase in advance, it's just a really good way to assess what you can afford, and it gives you the best chance of sticking to your guns and saying, okay, I said this, so I'm not going to do it. Or if you do it, you made a conscious decision and you haven't just let it run and run and run. So essentially, it's just a budget, and everybody works to a budget, whether you have one actually written down in a spreadsheet or you're tying it up in your head. Everyone has a budget that they would need to work to, unless you're incredibly fortunate and you have so much money that it doesn't matter. But for the vast majority of us, we are working to a budget, so there's no shame in having that budget and sticking to it. So in terms of enacting a spending limit, it's mostly going to be a matter of self-control and willpower. You can set spending limits via the family settings on an Xbox and PlayStation consoles, but as account administrator with the password, you would always be able to break it. If you were doing it for somebody else, your child, you have full control, but when you're doing it for yourself, it will, even with those provisions in mind, as you say, you'll still need that level of self-discipline to not just go in and change the settings. So that's another thing to think about, and yeah, that's just a good thing to consider for sure. You're muted, Adam, if you're saying something crucially important, which I know you're going to be saying an absolute nugget of insight. So let's hear it out of your mouth.
No, I was just moving my lips and no sound was coming out.
Fair.
Want to do it again? Here I go.
Yeah. Excellent point as always from Adam, but
you're welcome. I mean, I was just going to move on to the next thing because I know that we also wanted to talk about Game Pass as well, or really subscription services in general, and whether they are a good idea when you don't have much to spend. And I'd be interested to get your thoughts as well, Ben. But it kind of seems like it's going to be a very personal decision based on kind of your usage and your outlook on things, because subscription services in general, whether you've got Netflix or Spotify, I know they're going to be on the chopping block for a lot of people, as they are luxury spends at the end of the day. That is exactly what they are. It's what all games are, is a luxury. So they will be considered, they will be scrutinized by significant others and those sorts of things as well. But ultimately, if you're using it and it's potentially saving you money, then it might be worth keeping. So obviously with Game Pass, you can do a kind of a simple calculation where you could set yourself a theoretical budget for a few months of how many games you would buy. And then you can think, okay, if I had that budget, would I rather buy these 3 games outright, or would I rather say, for that same money, I could have this many months of Game Pass, which would maybe not be the exact games that I was looking for, but might be a whole range of games that keep me entertained in a kind of a different way. And obviously, it's not just Game Pass. There are other services as well you can subscribe to. Game Pass stands out as the one that I think most people in the industry would agree is the best deal, just in terms of the sheer amount of content you get for the amount that it costs. So there's always an individual consideration to make there as well. But I personally, I'm so bougie that I'm not going to cancel my Game Pass during an economic downturn. But I do think that, one, it's part of my job, and two, it's it is something that I use a lot. It's a subscription service that actually pays for itself in many ways, because it's the price of only a few games over the course of a year. £120 for a year of it, assuming you've got no deals, is only 2 full retail price titles. So for me, it works out, but I know that for a lot of people, maybe you, Ben, for example, you're might consider cancelling Game Pass or pausing it for a bit while things are tough and then bringing it back later.
Yeah, it's kind of a similar sentiment, I guess, to what we were saying about the deals. Like, and we go on about Game Pass on the show quite a lot, and are always singing its praises and like, check out Game Pass, it's such a good deal. But like you said, it's only a good deal if you're using it. You know, 11 pounds a month might not sound a lot. It might sound a lot. It depends on your individual situation. But if you're not using it, it's not a good deal. But like you said, for you yourself, you use it a lot, so it is a good deal. Me, I know for a fact I don't use it as much as you do, but likewise, I see it as a part of my job, and it's there, and I can get games as and when I need it for the show or just for general awareness, and sometimes just for fun. Sometimes I do play games for fun, but mostly
Yeah,
it's just the
funny that
grind of
sometimes.
work. Yeah. But yeah, it's like you say, it's very much a personal consideration. And if you are one of those people, maybe similar to me, who's like, I do use it, but I don't use it as much as maybe I could. Maybe when the family and friends pass rolls out, you're the kind of person who should be looking to get some friends together. And just because you can have five, to be honest, you only need to get three people. And judging by what we think the price is going to be, if you can get three of you, it brings the price down from what it was. So, and if you can get five, it brings it down even more. So, it's definitely worth considering, and don't fall into that trap as we've talked about, that because it is on paper a good deal, that it is necessarily a good deal for you if it's not. So,
Yeah.
definitely something to consider there. And as I say, it's not like other subscription services where you pay monthly, but you're tied in for 12 months and you're only getting that price because you've signed in for 12 months. Like Game Pass is you can start it and stop it, which is a great benefit of the system. So like Adam said, if you're like, actually there's not many games on here right now that I want to play, pause it, that's fine, and then you can always come back to it when you feel more comfortable to. So like we say at the beginning, like these aren't gonna change your life, but these tips here hopefully will help you save a few pounds. And I guess the old saying is, if you look after the pennies, the pounds will look after themselves. I'm not sure that's strictly true, maybe in the current economic climate we're in, but anything you can do to save a few pennies is worthwhile doing. So hopefully this has proved a little bit helpful to somebody. Adam, anything final you want to say before we sign off for the week?
No, I guess the usual kind of reminders that we are everywhere on the internet. If you liked the Tinykin footage, there's actually extended up to 40 minutes of Tinykin gameplay available on our YouTube channel right now. So you can go and watch that literally as soon as the show ends. And then we'll have the roundup tomorrow, as usual, as well, which is our weekly look at all the biggest stories in games and just our kind of opinions, really. Just an excuse for us to write stuff that we're thinking. It's like Twitter, but we pretend that it's more important. And yeah, that's all I've got to say.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for joining me, Adam. As always, I always appreciate your time and your company and your colleagueship and your friendship. Maybe not the last one, judging by the look on your face, but I consider you a friend, so it's in stone. And thank you, everybody at home who has joined us again and continues to join us. We appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, hit the purple button that's somewhere located on your screen, depending where you have it in the window. As Adam said, there's Tinykin's videos over on YouTube. Go subscribe over there and hit follow everywhere where we are. But until then, we'll be back on the live show same time next week, 4 o'clock. And we hope you have a lovely weekend. And yeah, see you then. Bye bye.
Bye.